Greetings, folks. Welcome to the final episode covering Series 4. I am your host, Dr. John. Welcome to Red Dwarf Rewatch, presented by the Not Funny Guys. And we are exactly where I said we were. We are on the verge of finishing Series 4 with Meltdown, directed by Ed By, which will be leaving us for a while, but written by our creators Rob Grant and Doug Naylor. This was released on the 21st of March, 1991. So a summary. Crichton uses a prototype matter paddle to teleport the crew to a nearby planet with an S3 or Earth-like atmosphere. They discover the planet has been visited by humans many years earlier, millions of years earlier, and been populated as kind of like an amusement park with wax droids. Apparently these wax droids have now over time broken free, and they're made up of characters from some of Earth's most famous people: Albert Einstein, Marilyn Monroe, Gandhi, Winnie the Pooh, Mother Teresa, and Elvis Presley, who are now in a war with their evil counterparts. So let's talk about some notes. First of all, it's worth noting here that this is sort of an obvious homage to the kind of Westworld, whether the HBO version or the original 1973 movie. At one point, we will hear Elvis tell Crichton and Rimmer that they've lost all their best heroes, people like John Lane, Sir Lancelot, Joan of Arc, Nelson, Wellington, Doris Day even, and apparently they're left with pacifists. Pythagoras is here, and he is still obsessed with triangles. Talks about villain world, which they're now at war with who has Hitler, Napoleon, Messalina, the Boston Strangler, Caligula, among others. Eventually, Lister and them will join up and accuse Rimmer of trying to train them to basically be the Dirty Dozen suicide mission. And then the villain world has James Last, who recorded a version of Coco Cabana that was used the first transmission of the episode Terraform. And Lister mentions this only because apparently he appears in Rimmer's record collection. But he's a qualified villain. So going back to the beginning, we open with Lister and Kat wanting to get Rimmer to shut up, telling this weird war game story about how he played Risk against his cadet squad commander and beat him. And it's like epically boring. And they're boring to death. Kat apparently has gone as far as to stop up his ears. Rimmer's not listening to Lister's attempt to tell him to shut up. They're trying to play a card game and he's going on about this. He apparently has a journal, a campaign journal of his Risk command, of his Risk games. Ugh. And I thought having a index card with football games from Madden was stupid. It was stupid. This is too. Lister finally loses and tells him to shut the smeg up. He then starts trying to go back to his story when all of a sudden Crichton appears in there, just teleports in. He has found this matter transporter prototype he found on the Z deck. He cobbled it together, fixed it up. He says we should go discuss this on Starbug. Kat and Rimmer go out. After they jump, where they're supposed to be going to the Navicom in Starbug, they end up instead in the shower and have to go on foot. When they're in Starbug, Holly makes the suggestion they use as exploration. They have found a planet they can jump to, which is in range that would take billions of years to get there, but they can jump to it instantaneously. Crichton wants him and Rimmer to go ahead to make sure the planet is safe. He has taken into account Rimmer's congenital, natural cowardness. And to compensate for this, he gets access through Holly to Rimmer's light projector. It's the only thing physical about him because he indicates he can't touch the paddle. Lister then proceeds to take it and throw it in his mouth, catch it, and then spit it up. Crichton then eventually takes him to the planet. It's normal. They send the paddle back for the others. Before then, they realize they're not in exactly a safe place because all of a sudden they have to run for their lives facing off against terrible monsters. Meanwhile, it reappears. Lister and Kat take and jump in. They don't run into terrible monsters, though. They run into a conference room with Hitler. They jump to the table. Then they jump away and into the fireplace. And Lister proceeds to tell the Cat about who they saw. He said that little one with the mustache is Hitler. The other one with the child predator glasses is Goebbels. And then there was Goering, was the fat one. Did you know he was a cocaine addict and a transvestite? This is when they find out that they can be seen, their legs through the fireplace, and they get taken prisoner. Meanwhile, and the machine is confiscated. Meanwhile, Rimmer and Crichton escape the monster creatures and are captured by Elvis and what appears to eventually we find out is Pope Gregory. Finally, Lister and Kat, this is where it gets good. Lister and Kat are in prison. They're facing possible torture. Kat wants it straight, then he breaks down over it. Lister can't figure out why they are not on this other planet, but somehow went back in time to Nazi Germany, but they're not. Lister then points out that there's a gallows outside, a little inverted L with a little dangly thing. He says, yes, it does have a noosey theme to it. And they're trying to think of a plan to escape when all of a sudden men are marching out, and Lister's looking and telling the cat about this. Richard III, Mussolini, Al Capone, James Last of our previous statement. Worst people in history. And they're putting together a firing squad for none other than Winnie the Pooh, who refuses the blindfold before they shoot him. And Lister's like, you should never have to see that. They are then joined in their cell by Abraham Lincoln. Eventually, they'll get the same description that Rimmer and Crichton will get. So Rimmer and Crichton are taken to the good guys HQ, where we find Pythagoras going on and Einstein chewing him out about the whole thing with triangles. And they basically find out that there's only about 20 good guys left. They all were part of a wax museum thing that broke its program after being left alone for millions of years. And now they've been in this war of good versus evil. They've got Laurel and Hardy, Marilyn Monroe. They've lost all their good wares, I noted earlier. They are in look of a leader, and Rimmer is in heaven. It's his dream, his destiny, stepping into a leadership of the group. What a grandiose moron. He wants the troops assembled for inspection. Meanwhile, basically Lincoln ends up telling Lister and Cat the same story before Caligula and Rasputin show up to interrogate them about the device. Lister uses the paddle and then takes his hand off at the last second with Cat, and Caligula and Rasputin end up in the closet, and they run away, and they basically escape. Rimmer, in the meantime, is playing this whole grandiose battle. Crichton keeps questioning his sanity. He calls for an inspection of the guys. We got Elvis, we got Einstein, Pythagoras, Gandhi, who he lays into, Marilyn Monroe, Laurel, Pope Gregory, Mother Teresa, St. Francis of Assisi, Santa Claus, Dalai Lama, Noel Coward. I don't exactly know that reference, but I'll have to look it up at another point. Well, I looked it up. It turns out he's a playwright, composer, director, actor, and singer. Okay, cool beans. So that's who he is. And finally, Jean-Paul Sartre, who also gets chewed out. He particularly makes Gandhi get down and do really awkward-looking push-ups. Tells him to get a uniform instead of a nappy, and he leaves Crichton to sort of conduct PT for the whole group. And in the process, 3 of them end up melting from exhaustion. Rimmer is now dressed like General Patton, and their plan is to attack over the minefield in daylight because they won't suspect it. Elvis then brings in Lister and the cat who've arrived, and they question Rimmer's sanity too. In fact, at one point, Crichton sort of implies that the whole Lister throwing it up in the air and catching his mouth might have done something. And Lister tells him, you're turning holy men and pacifists into the dirty dozen. Suicide mission. They're only wax droids is what Rimmer says to him, but then Lister basically says they've broken their programming. They've become more than that, but then he decides to arrest them rather than listen to them. He then lines them all up to attack overland while sending Crichton and Queen Victoria to go off to do something else. And they start dying as Rimmer and Holly ride off on a motorcycle away from the scene. And then Victoria, apparently they snuck around. Victoria gets the drop on the bad guys. Crichton, she gets killed, but it's not before she kills most of them. Crichton then goes off to find the device, and it's part of apparently a decoy mission was the main attack. The mission that was apparently to turn up the thermostat and then melt all of them, every one of the wax people. It's VW Day, Victory in Wax World. The army are slaughtered, the enemy is slaughtered, it's all war. Lister goes on to question Rimmer, who claims that he brought about peace, freedom, and democracy to this planet. And all I can think about is that crazy speech from Anakin Skywalker at the end of episode 3 of Star Wars. Speaking of which, you should check that out over on our main podcast channel, notfunnyguys.offthereels. You should check that out. Yeah. Meanwhile, Lister gigs Holly, give him Rimmer's light beam. He swallows it this time. Come out in a few days. Oh, I think it's a valid punishment. And of course, they jump away at the ship. And that brings us to the end of the episode. Wonderful episode. Really one of my favorites would win. We're having a long run of very good episodes here, but I think that's most of Red Dwarf in my opinion. Next time we'll have Series 5. Come back on Friday for Holoship. In the meantime, please like, subscribe, comment, share, all that fun stuff. We love it. We want to hear from you. So check the description for our email and our socials. But if you want to write to us, notfunnyguys.offthereels@gmail.com in the ticker and in the description below. We want to hear thoughts and ideas from you, but we will be continuing on in our exploration of Red Dwarf. But in the meantime, as I've already kind of mentioned, if you are in the mood for something else, you need a different flavor of things, we have lots of things to offer over here at Not Funny Guys. We have our main podcast, as I just said, Not Funny Guys present Off the Reels. We talk about movies. Right now, we are actually crunching through the Star Wars, which is why I had that Andy Star Wars reference point on hand. We've covered episode 1, episode 2, episode 3, and because we are going chronological order in universe, after that we did Solo, followed by Rogue One, and now we are just wrapping up the original trilogy. The original trilogy. No, thank you, R2. We are doing the original trilogy with episode 4, and we hope episode 5, Empire Strikes Back, and we just released episode 6, Return of the Jedi. So those are all up. We'll be moving on to the sequels, even though Casey continually jokes about making us watch those terrible Ewok movies. But we're just making Eric watch them instead. But if that's not your flavor, we also have our academic-based, I don't know how to decide. We have our Not Funny Guys present Thinking About Thinking, which is a shorter podcast where we get into topics of discussion, philosophy, rhetoric, AI, the works, whatever myself, Dr. John, and our Not Funny Gal, Dr. Kristen, are thinking about. We rhyme range all over the place and talk about a lot of different things. I think our latest episode was up. We were talking about AI models and not the ones that tried to be your girlfriend. And we will have another one talking about liberalism and illiberalism coming out soon. So keep an eye out for those. They vary from week to week. We trade off. Sometimes we need the levity of Dr. Kristen to balance me out. But again, if that's not your flavor, they're not doctors. Casey and Eric, my other two Not Funny Guys, they actually have another podcast where they talk about horror movies and wrestling. And that's Wrestling with the Horror of It All, that you can check out as well. They like to cover they're going through, I think, a movie a day right now in October as a kind of part of the Halloween atmosphere, but they're talking about that as well as the wrestling you can find on TV. And you can see some of their promotional stuff here on the YouTube channel as well. They went down to Fright Nights, or I'm continuing to make myself misremember whatever it is they went to back in a couple weeks ago down in Orlando somewhere, something about horror related. I don't know. You can check out their videos of the podcast if you want to know more. In the meantime, come back with us and join us again next time. Like, share, subscribe. Also, remember, keep it not funny. Take care of yourselves. And most of all, don't be a smeghead. Don't. Especially the way Rimmer was in this episode.